This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states. Hey, I'm Candice Lim.
And I'm Nitish Pawa, and you're listening to ICYMI.
In case you missed it.
Slate's podcast about internet culture.
And Nitish, welcome back to the show. The last time you were here was back in July when we talked about that Bagoo controversy where they used artificial intelligence to make a horse bag. Remember that?
Oh man, I remember it well.
Uh-huh.
As a reminder, I'm the business and tech writer, so obviously all I do is write and talk about fashion now.
And with that, I want to ask a question that I actually have never, ever asked you, or probably any guest on this show.
All right, hit me.
Nitish, today's episode is about Derek Guy, aka @DieWorkwear, who was probably one of the few people to benefit from Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter, now X.com, back in 2022. We're going to talk about who Derek Guy is and why he became the forefront of menswear criticism online, but I actually wanted to ask about you and your relationship to menswear, starting with who is in your Bermuda shorts triangle? Let me explain. I have this theory, that everyone has 3 core brands, and at least one brand is always on their body at any given time. I'll give an example and talk about me first. My 3 are probably J. Crew, Uniqlo, and Gap. So Nitish, I will turn the tables. What are your core 3 brands, your fashion triangle, some may say?
That is a great question, and I think that's a very smart theory. When I think about it now, yeah, there are definitely 3 very consistent ones for me. On the jeans end, it's Levi's. I love me my Levi's.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get enough. On the shirt, sweatshirt, sweater end, love me some Nautica. I think,
Okay.
yeah. That was bequeathed to me by my parents, and I don't know. I just love that little sail logo. They have nice colors, You could get them on discount at the supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
and sorry, the mall, I should say. But anyway,
Yes.
Yeah. And after that, for my shoes, I mean, it's as the late great Mac Miller once said, Nike's on my feet.
Okay, that's good. I like that. Now, can I ask, when you were in middle school, high school, did you have a favorite store in the mall you had to shop in?
All right, you're gonna roll your eyes at this answer, but you'll also find it makes total sense. It was Hot Topic.
I knew it. And tell me why I'm right, Nitish. Tell me why I'm right.
I mean, I'm a dark, brooding man. I'm a very
emo.
Contemplative person. Yes, I love me some brooding bands and some band tees to that effect. I love me the little knickknacks you can get at Hot Topic. It felt like it felt like the right vibe for me, as opposed to so many other places in the store. I couldn't deal with Hollister. That thing smelled awful. Hot Topic, whatever you say about it, it did not smell.
Interesting. I also wanted to ask, have you been in a mall recently? Because I weirdly have been in many malls very recently. And it's so jarring because, look, my hot take is that every mall is dying except the ones with the Din Tai Fung in it. And that is a very LA, Southern California specific reference. But every time I hear about the death of the mall or even retail, I'm kind of I don't know, because it's Tuesday afternoon. I'm at the Glendale Galleria and it is popping. People don't have jobs and they're here.
Yeah, no kidding. That is also a great question. I mean, so, I come from a small town, suburban Michigan, so there are many, many malls here, outdoor, indoor, desolate, maybe one store remaining or one theater. I will say, every time I go back to visit my folks, there is a mall there that's been slowly dying pretty much ever since I was in high school. I think they're trying to revitalize it by basically turning it back into like some sort of like mini amusement park. But they also have a a local bookstore that's always been one of my favorites and that I always visit every time I'm back. My old high school English teacher still works there, called Schuler Books. So, yeah,
Oh,
that's if I'm going to the mall, I'm going to Schuler probably, and then walking around and gawking at all the empty storefronts.
oh, that's so cute. And you know what? Let's go to the mall. Because on today's episode, we're talking about Twitter's most famous, possibly divisive, and sometimes political fashion critic, Derek Guy. When we come back, Nitish will tell me about that time he interviewed Derek, how his Twitter account at @DieWorkwear started, and what happened in 2022 to make him the fashion guy we love to hate. All that and more after the break. Whether you're listening to ICYMI at double speed or regular speed, you'd probably love to know how you can get more cash back on your credit card. Either way, we'll slow things down a bit so you don't miss anything. Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back to $300. It pays to discover. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
This episode is brought to you by Lumen. Your metabolism is your body's engine, so optimizing your metabolic health translates to easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Introducing Lumen, the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. To use Lumen, all you have to do is breathe into your Lumen device first thing in the morning, and then the app lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs. Then, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. It also gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. Breathe into it before and after workouts and meals so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on the top of your health game. Take the next step in improving your health. Go to lumen.me/ICYMI to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/ICYMI for 15% off your purchase.
Hey listeners, hope you're enjoying today's show. If this is your first time listening, then welcome. We are thrilled to have you here. In case you missed it, our show comes out twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So make sure you never miss an episode like this past Wednesdays when Slate culture writer Nadira Goff and I share the best things we've seen online lately, from viral construction workers to cussing out your boss. And we're back. I am here with Slate's business and tech writer Nitish Pawa, who back in January of 2023 interviewed someone named Derek Guy, who goes by the handle at @DieWorkwear online. So let's start here. Nitish, back in 2023, why did you reach out to interview Derek? Like, how had you heard of him? Was something bubbling up at the time that made you go, oh, gotta get on the phone?
Yeah, so something in the algorithm made Derek Guy himself at Die Workwear appear in a ton of people's For You feeds, like so many, to the point where you got to the point of people tweeting nonstop, like, I see that menswear guy all over my feed. I see that menswear. Who's that menswear guy? When did he start coming on in? You know, a little chatter, 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 and so on. At the time, my editor asked if I wanted to reach out to him, try to land an interview. And it turns out that right at that time, about 8 other brilliant editors from other outlets also had the same idea. So, like, in early January, pretty much all of us, like, on the same span of days, published our own Q&As with Mr. Derek Guy himself. I will give a shout out to GQ for being first, but I was close behind. And I had a very substantive interview with him. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I definitely want to get into those questions of like, did Twitter platform him for a reason? Was there something happening behind the algorithm? But before we get there, I think we need to ask, where did this guy come from? So can you give me the Wikipedia early life rundown? Like, who was Derek Guy before 2022?
So Derek Guy is a fashion writer who lives out in San Francisco. And yes, his name is Derek Guy. It's not Derek Menswear Guy, but it is Derek Guy. He is the son of Vietnamese refugees, and he was born in Vancouver. Back in high school, he was really into this online forum for menswear enthusiasts called Style Forum. And from there, he really got into, tailoring, suits, drainpipe trousers, skinny black ties, a lot of like the aesthetics you would see from like jazz musicians from the 50s and 60s, the French new wave actors of that time who, copied and looked up to a lot of those jazz aesthetics. And so by 2010, he starts his own Tumblr called Dye Workwear, which of course is where his Twitter handle comes from. The term was an inside joke because one of his friends apparently wore too much workwear. And, that's the kind of thing you joke about when you're really into menswear. And he was blogging for a bit on Tumblr, like so many of us were at the time, until the radio host and podcaster everyone knows as Jesse Thorne reached out to him. He was the editor of a menswear site called Put This On, and he noticed Derek's blogs, asked him to contribute some pieces. And then Derek went from blogging to microblogging by joining Twitter in 2011, and he's often sharing his Tumblr posts. And right about now, there's like a pretty big boom time in like menswear culture online. 2011 is also around when 4Pins starts and begins really taking off. And, he kept appearing, here and there, like this interview, that post, maybe that viral tweet, but he was never like as ubiquitous as he is now.
And just to add to the early life section, it's interesting because I did have questions about like, is Derek Guy doing this full time? Just like firing off tweets and threads about menswear. Is that like his job? And Lauren Sherman interviewed him for Puck. She asked him if he had a job before he started writing, and he says twice in that interview that he likes to keep that private. I just want to pop in and say, Derek, you're not that private because I did the work, okay? I went through your tweets from 2011 to 2012, and I can report on this podcast today that on December 19th, 2011, sorry, I'm screaming. On December 19th, 2011, you, Derek, tweeted, quote, I taught at a chess school for a while. Glamorous, I know. One of my colleagues used to tuck his chunky sweaters in. Was a sight. Natish, did you know that? He worked at the chess school?
I did not know that. Somehow that never came up in our interview. That makes me all the more enthusiastic because, as you know, I love chess, love playing chess, love talking to chess people about chess.
Yeah. Yeah. So I scooped you.
You did indeed.
I also found the Wall Street Journal. They interviewed him. I believe it's him. It's someone named Derek Guy for a piece in September 2016. It was about like sports coats. And they called him a 37-year-old graduate student in political science at the University of California, Berkeley, UC Berkeley. And I was like, okay, Mr. Mysterious, I know where you came from. Which is really interesting because I think politics does come into his brand a little bit. But I think what might be helpful is understanding why people like Derek's tweets in the first place. Natish, how would you describe his tone or what he writes about to those who haven't come across him before?
Yeah, he is an absolutely fascinating tweeter because, he is not afraid to really stick to his niche. He knows what he's into. He's very interested in it. He has, as his Twitter picture, a sketched outline of a former Attorney General Elliot Richardson from the Nixon administration, not because he's like a huge like Richardson stan or anything, but because he thought Elliot Richardson dressed very well, which, he did.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
there's a lot of it that just like plays into that. He tends to be very cheeky, but he also, as you alluded to, I think very much lets his personal politics play and show up in the things he tweets about. He tweets a lot about urbanism, walkable cities and how cities are designed. Big thing for Twitter in general. He, of course, tweets about fits, and he likes to share images of great fits from past and present. He also likes to dunk on fits from past and present that do not exactly shape up in his eyes. And I mean, he often very meticulously explains why that is. And he's so deeply knowledgeable enough that, you'll often find someone who like tries to like undercut him on a point or like, ask him like all annoyed about like, what do you know about this stuff? And he will, I mean, just at least in his online tone, he comes off just like very calmly, patiently explaining, yeah, I mean, this is what I know. This is what I'm saying. This is why I'm saying it. And I think people appreciate that, frankness, that straightforwardness. And menswear is obviously an object of fascination, a thing of great interest that perhaps not like many people have that much knowledge about. So it's always interesting just to hear from an expert who isn't like academic about his work.
And it's interesting because in doing research for this episode, I was trying to figure out like, is there a comp for Derek Guy on the female fashion side? And like the closest person I got to was maybe like Cora Harrington, who is kind of like a historian. She tweets about lingerie and things like that. But I think the like kind of small difference is that Derek Guy goes viral for stuff that is not always his intention. So what I mean by that is like Prem Tucker interviewed him for the New Republic and said that, quote, the intrigue in his virality somewhat overshadows what Guy actually wants to talk about, which is the labor crisis born from fast fashion, the ways liberalism may have influenced clothing consumption, and how we can adopt a more thoughtful approach to fashion. And I sometimes feel like, and please tell me if you agree with this, Nitish, I sometimes feel like Derek Guy is that older person in the office who, like, let's say you're in a group of 6 people just hanging out around the donuts and you're like talking. He's the guy who just like comes out of nowhere, drops a crazy one-liner, walks away, and you have more questions, but he's like he's too detached to like actually field them. And so he just causes intrigue without following up on that. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's very fair to note. He likes dropping bombs. He's very confrontational. And, I mean, confrontational in a way that doesn't always, like, come off as, like, pugilistic, but just kind of like the smart, knowing guy, like, shooting out a little jab your way. And it's funny, you mentioned Cora. I've interviewed her a couple times, actually, including in part about how the Twitter algorithm also boosted her quite a bit. I don't know, something about Elon Musk's early Twitter and fashion. But, I think, she's, I guess you could say, she's not so quietly aggressive a presence, I guess you could put it. I think she likes to leave well enough alone, but I don't think Derek is afraid of getting into a little online fisticuffs.
Yeah, and so going back to the timeline, Derek is writing for Put This On, Tumblr. Things kind of boom for him in the last 2 months of 2022 because his follower count goes from like 100,000 to more than 1 million followers. That is the type of social growth that like chicken finger companies pray for in their sleep. And he did it in a way that like seems organic, but maybe it's not. Nitish, kind of please walk me through what happened between 2022 and 2023.
So around that time, which was, of course, around when Elon was closing the deal on Twitter, then did close the deal on Twitter and immediately start making changes. Throughout that little period of upheaval, Derek spoke to a Czech site called ProDCD, and he said, "This happened because I started writing more informative threads, like one on how to buy a cashmere sweater or how much it costs to make a dress shirt in the US. These threads gained traction just as Elon Musk introduced a new algorithm that amplified my content further." And Alexa Kors wrote in the Wall Street Journal that Some users speculate Guy's benefited from Twitter's efforts to emphasize an algorithmic timeline, something a little more akin to like TikTok's algorithm. To quote from her piece, at the end of 2022, the platform increasingly promoted its For You timeline, meaning that, in addition to tweets from accounts they follow, users also began to see tweets recommended from them, even from accounts they didn't follow or would never otherwise encounter.
And I kind of want to give an idea of like what type of threads or tweets Derek was specifically firing off during this time. Can we get an example of that?
So just one example, in late 2022, he had a big thread about guys asking for an ID, bouncers, and asking about a very generic black leather jacket they like because the wearer has a strong jawline. It's just like stuff like this that combines so many different like societal fashions in addition to the sartorial factors. He's very much not afraid to bring like history into things. He's not afraid to talk about, the materials and the craft. I mean, he's more than willing to speculate on just like people's motives and their reasons for wearing something or why they would ask about what another person is wearing. And again, I think a lot of people are drawn to that. I think a lot of people are always interested in looking up just like what actually goes behind a certain trend or seeing something that like they never really thought about before. I mean, like a black leather jacket is a black leather jacket, right? But then Derek Kai comes in and he's like, well, actually, and then you get drawn right in.
Yeah, he is such a actually guy.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I don't know if this is me just being mean, but I sometimes feel like he kind of ruins the party. I'll give an example, which is that under this tweet that I feel like started quite innocently, where I think someone was just kind of like, hey, found this jacket, would love you to ID it, tell me like who makes it, where I can buy it. He then tweets out a picture under it of Jeremy Allen White as Carmi from The Bear, just like wearing a shirt with the text, remember how many people went nuts trying to ID this t-shirt? You don't like the T. You like his biceps and want to have sex with him. And I went, whoa. There's a lot going on here. The first one being that this is 2022. This is the year that The Bear season 1 came out. If you were on Twitter that summer, you know the conversation happening around Carmi, Jaw, white Taylor t-shirts. It was everywhere. And to me, I wonder if this is where people started to hate Derek a bit, because I will be honest, I kind of remember seeing this tweet out of context on my timeline. I didn't know who Die Workwear was. And at first I read this and I thought, oh, he's like just coming at women for being attracted to Carmi. And I was a little bit like, okay, reply guy. But kind of putting myself aside for a second, you look at the comments under that tweet and the consensus down below is like, I think it's both that like you like the shirt and you want to have sex with Carmi. Is that kind of the vibe you also got?
Yeah, I think there is sometimes, a little bit of a know-it-all attitude. I mean, because he often does know quite a bit, if not all. And there's also an element there where, yeah, I mean, he, someone tweets something and it's just kind of like, whatever. They're just like dashing it off. They're not thinking too much about it. And then here, the professor comes adding a lot of thought, right? And the thing is, when I interviewed him, he was very cognizant, I think, about, this happening to him even quite a bit. Sometimes he'll like dash off a tweet without thinking, and then people will like extrapolate from that, something that just completely is not there. I mean, this is one of my favorites. He said, quote, "Thinking about the time I tweeted that I like walking to the grocery store, and someone from the Department of Defense told me I'm responsible for gentrification." So, it happens to all of us. I think we all dish and take it a little bit. But at the same time, I mean, this is around when he started really appearing in a lot more feeds. And he also already had like a long time internet presence, so no matter what, there is always a bit of a power imbalance there. And especially when it comes to something as, well, male as the menswear space.
Let me ask, when you were on the phone with him, do you feel like his tone and his conversation with you kind of matched your idea of his tone and his tweets?
Honestly, not at all. Like, he was so just kind and personable. I mean, he definitely, like, spoke about menswear like a very knowledgeable person like him tweets about menswear. He knows the jargon, he knows all the attributions, he knows, like, the history, but I think this speaks to a lot of the disparity between, you know, a lot of our online lives and our offline lives, right? It's very easy to talk spicy on the computer, especially when you don't have a headshot that has your face on it, which guilty. I also do not tend to use pictures of my own face on my social profiles, but this goes back to the age-old difference of text versus speech, right? In text, you can't really convey the same, like, stresses and, you know, sarcasm, say, or little like musical tweaks and verbs you add here and there when you're actually speaking to really get across a point or accentuate what you're really meaning when you're saying something. And on, you know, especially on a place like Twitter, obviously, it's just very easy to take things out of context or collapse the context or just completely miss the actual point behind something that's intended. So, you know, I think Derek Guy in some ways is a lot like us on the internet. You know, he's not super like his online self in real life, but when he's online, he is just as subject to the incentives of the algorithms, the incentives of engagement and online fame that all of us are, frankly.
Yeah. I actually would love to throw a second theory at you as to why he got big on Twitter, specifically at the end of 2022, which comes via Connor on Twitter, who wrote, "After a pandemic, I need new suits. Is there a brand that you like? I have broad chest, wide shoulders of a tall person, and short, stubby legs." And it made me wonder, Nitish, is there a possibility that another reason why Derek got really popular in 2022 is that multiple tech companies started implementing like mandatory return to office or RTO policies, which forced their employees to like start investing and caring about work clothes again?
You know, that's an excellent point. I hadn't really thought about that before, but I think there is definitely something there, not least because, you know, when the Twitter switchover happened, a lot of the people who remained on the platform are like, you know, tech types, white collar types, right? A lot of them had worked from home and doom scrolled throughout the thick of the pandemic. And I mean, we remember all the conversations around then, a lot of people talking about like showing up to Zoom meetings in pajamas and stuff, you know, letting, you know, perhaps the fancier clothes lie fallow. Sometimes I know people would show up in fancier clothes on Zoom for the sake of it, but that was not like the most common impulse. So yeah, I think there is something to when offices started demanding people return to the office again, people really started having to care about their outside appearance. Like maybe they had gone outside, but it was just like with friends. Maybe it was, you know, to go to a protest or to a bar that served you like to-go drinks. And now it's like, oh no, I have to dress for like an office again. So I think that totally makes sense. And, you know, again, these are a lot of the same type of people who would have stayed on Twitter after Elon took it over. And so the first person they might have seen was Derek on their guide, and they figured, hey, let me follow this guy. Let me see what he's got to say.
Yeah. And his username is literally die, work, wear, and people needed things to wear to work. And so I think he was apt for that. But when I think about Derek's like very interesting rise in 2022, I think this is also about what happens when you get kind of famous online, let's say 1 million followers famous, and you breach beyond your audience bubble. You know, you start attracting the attention of people who read you out of context. They don't really know what you're about, and that does kind of breed trolls and criticism, whether it's fair or not. And so I wonder if this is when people started calling him kind of pretentious. But before we get to the controversies or backlash surrounding Derek, we need to take a break. When we come back, Nitish will walk me through the backlash Derek has gotten since 2022 and why some of his fans became his haters. All that and more after the break. Listening on Audible helps your imagination soar. No matter the genre you love, you can be inspired to imagine new worlds, new possibilities, and new ways of thinking. I've recently fallen in love with the Rivals series by Jilly Cooper. The audiobook is fantastic, and it really takes you back to that 1980s Cotswolds vibe. Find the genres you love or discover new ones with the best selection of audiobooks, podcasts, and Audible originals, all in one app. Audible makes it easy to be inspired and entertained as part of your daily routine without needing to set aside extra time. I love listening to audiobooks while driving because it feels like you're hanging out with an audio companion. There's more to imagine when you listen. New members can try Audible now free for 30 days with your first audiobook included. Visit audible.com/ICYMI or text ICYMI to 500-500. That's audible.com/ICYMI or text ICYMI to 500-500. This episode is brought to you by Saks.com. There's joy in finding the perfect gift for the ones you love, but it can be a challenge. Saks.com's holiday gift guide makes it easy. Whether you're surprising your hard-to-shop for sister with a Chloe bracelet bag or gifting your partner a memorable scent from Gucci, at Saks.com, there's holiday inspiration for every personality on your list. I love using Saks.com because it is clean, easy to use, and so fun to scroll around for inspiration. I'm currently on the hunt for a really nice winter coat, and I'm also looking to put together some fun holiday looks, especially with all these Christmas parties coming around the corner. Now, thankfully, Saks has me covered because they have everything my friends have been begging me for, from Le Labo candles to Jo Malone London perfumes. And while I'm there, I might as well throw in these really cute Michael Kors boots I've been dying to gift myself. Saks.com's hand-picked guide can help take the stress out of the holidays. Add instant cheer to your home with some bright decor. Find gifts guaranteed to bring joy to everyone this holiday season at Saks.com. That's Saks.com for the ultimate holiday gift guide and all the shopping inspiration you need. Whether you're listening to ICYMI at double speed or regular speed, you'd probably love to know how you can get more cash back on your credit card. Either way, we'll slow things down a bit so you don't miss anything. Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back to $300. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/credit card. And we're back. So before the break, Nitish, you walked me through the journey of Derek Guy, aka Dye Workwear. And now we are in 2022, 2023, when he has more than 1 million followers and is still firing off these tweets about menswear. What's different now is that he is being called a menswear expert, and therefore he's getting freelance gigs. He's writing pieces like why men's makeup matters in politics, or how power shoulders tell a story of this campaign for the New York Times. And I want to talk about the backlash Derek has gotten, because I spoke about this interview he did with Lauren Sherman for Puck. Something stood out to me there, and it's this moment when Lauren asks him if someone from Twitter has reached out to him, because there was kind of this question of did you get popular because of your content or because someone at Twitter really, really loves you? And he responds by saying, quote, "Someone emailed me once. I don't know if I want to say that partly because I don't want people to know that I have an email address." I don't know about you, Nitish, I found this a little pretentious. And I don't know if, like you said, he's one of those guys who kind of carries like a different tone over text versus in real life. But this, plus telling Lauren twice that he won't tell her what his previous job was because he's like so private, followed by the way he like interacts with people on Twitter sometimes. I don't know. What is your best guess for why some people don't like Derek?
I mean, I think it kind of goes back to what I kind of alluded to earlier, which is like the professor factor, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I definitely notice a lot, like, I tend to be like angrier or perhaps a little more sanctimonious online than you might expect me to be in real life. And again, I think that just goes back to all the incentives of engagement, of visibility, and of, you know, doubling down on what you consider to be your brand or what others have deemed for you to be said brand. And yeah, and regarding the email address thing, I mean, all I'm going to say is it was very easy to find his email when I interviewed him.
That's so funny. I think you're right. I think that some of the, let's say, negative attention on Derek is unwarranted. I sometimes wonder if some of it is a little bit on him for very specifically taking on conservative figures and going after their fashion. I'm kind of thinking about the time he tweeted about Jordan Peterson and the time he tweeted about Matt Walsh and kind of went after him about like sport coat length and things like that. I wonder, do you think it is fair game for him to go after those people?
Well, first of all, it's always fair game to go after Matt Walsh, who is a terrible person and who deserves to be gone after at all times. But that being said, it is interesting you bring up that sort of partisan aspect to it, because I remember I asked him when we talked, you know, there was a tweet of an old photo of Reagan tweeted out by the official GOP account. And, you know, he had a very sort of like snarky, funny menswear angle tweet about it. And I asked him, you know, is this like, you know, with the algorithm boosting and everything, with the, you know, you talking about your own personal politics, do you think that like engaging in politics more is what you might want to be doing? And he told me, I don't want to seem bad nature. I've been a little more careful about making those kinds of jokes as my audience has grown. I'm still figuring it out. I don't want my account to be constantly dunking on Republicans or something. This was now a year and a half ago, at least. And I think, again, as the Twitter algorithm has changed, as like it's gone on to boosting so many more of these like very far right figures, you know, who often tweet ridiculous things, it's easy to take the bait and, you know, do little dunk. God knows I've done it. And it goes back to incentives, right? No matter what, you're going to take the opportunity for further engagement, visibility, if it's there, because, I mean, especially in his case, but yeah, what does it lead to? It leads to more online fame, which, you know, in one sense, obviously he struggled with, but in another sense, yeah, he's getting all these spotlights and profiles. He is able to get some very famous people to respond to him. And I think, especially when you've been online for a long time and kind of under the radar, that sort of thing becomes very seductive. And I don't want to like insinuate that, you know, he's just some like lemming who like gets caught up in a wave of algorithmic incentive. But I think it's just more that we are all very shaped by social media far more than we'd like to think sometimes.
Yeah. I also wonder if maybe another reason why Derek gets like flamed online is because no one knows what he looks like. You know, he's done podcast interviews where he's camera off. Like you said, his Twitter profile pic, it's not even him. It's like an illustration of that guy from Watergate. And he comments on other men's appearances without providing an appearance of himself. And I kind of wonder if by not allowing himself to be criticized under this guise of privacy, I don't know, do you think he's like shielding himself in a way that makes people feel like he's hiding behind his Twitter account?
Oh, absolutely. I think you see a big difference there between him and a lot of other, online menswear guys who are very open about their face and their appearance, right? They're trying to show off their fit checks pretty much every day. They're much less hesitant to back up whatever they're saying online with what they're wearing here. And the more anonymized factor probably worked better when, he was in certain spaces, but not as prominent to a wider audience. So when you have a bigger audience and you're trying to navigate that sort of thing can definitely come off, I think, very mean-spirited. It's when you're not willing to back it up, by showing off your own face instead of Elliot Richardson's. I mean, online is a terrible place to have a face, to be completely honest, unless you're very hot. And who knows, maybe the real life Derek guy is smoking. I have no idea. None of us do. But I think there is something to that. And I think it's a tension that perhaps he has not been able to figure out how to navigate super efficiently, for better or worse.
I wanted to give an example of some of the backlash that Derek gets. Our wonderful researcher, Kat Hong, found some great tweets from people who are less optimistic about Derek's rise. I want to talk about that one time he tweeted a photo of Daniel Craig, and he used it as an example of how some guys wear jackets that are too small for them. Here were some of the responses to that tweet. Someone wrote, "Menswear guy using Daniel Craig as a negative example. I'm afraid we might have to cancel him after all." There was someone who goes by the Twitter name Jorts who wrote, "The menswear guy seems like a lovely person and has great analysis and critique, but unfortunately his taste is chronically New York, boring, professional, managerial, class-pilled. So I will become the Philadelphia menswear guy for the people." Which is funny because Derek Guy does not live in New York. Last tweet, "My spidey sense tells me Twitter is about to turn on menswear guy. Watch this space." Okay. These are just a small picking, but I kind of want to ask, despite all of that, do you think Derek Guy is moving or has been moving the conversation about menswear in a net positive direction? What was missing from the conversation and how does he fill that hole?
I got to be honest, I don't know if the conversation has moved really. I think it's more that it's become very individualized. I don't think that Derek Guy's rise has necessarily, synced up with a concurrent rise and all sorts of other menswear types who are also being, feeded by the same people and same publications who have come to Derek. I think he's just a very singular figure. And it doesn't really say much about the broader menswear world. Maybe we will get some stats on this. Maybe we will see a rise in better dressed people. But look, we both live in near big cities. We see how people dress these days. I'm not seeing people dress much better than they were before the pandemic. That's just not happening. I'm even talking I go to visit my friends in the financial district. Yeah, no, it's not happening.
Yeah, if Derek Guy could put one good thing in the universe, it would be the ultimate complete dunking of the FIDI uniform, right? The Patagonia vest with the button up and the jeans. If he can find a way to eradicate that from culture, he will win the Nobel Prize. He will.
Oh, absolutely. It'll be well-deserved.
Yeah.
But we are not quite there yet. And I think that's, again, testament to the fundamentally limited nature of this kind of online fame. I think ultimately the lesson of even this bit of online fame is for everybody to just log off. I say this on the Internet Culture Podcast, and as someone who is literally never going to log off, but I encourage everyone to log off.
Yeah, I think that's good universal blanket advice. Okay, that's the show. We'll be back in your feed on Wednesday, so definitely subscribe. That way, you never miss an episode. Leave us a rating and a review in Apple or Spotify, and tell your friends about us. You can follow us on Twitter at ICYMI_pod, and you can always drop us a note at ICYMI@slate.com.
ICYMI is produced by Se'era Spragley Ricks and Candice Lim, with production assistance from Alexandra Botti and Kat Hong. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer, and Alicia Montgomery is Slate's vice president of audio. See you online.
Or on Style Forum.
If you have Medicare and Medicaid, then keep listening. You may qualify for a dual special needs plan from United Healthcare. It's time you feel confident you're managing your whole health. With a dual special needs plan from United Healthcare, it's not just health insurance, it's healthy living. You deserve coverage you can count on, so why not see how a dual special needs plan from United Healthcare may help you get extra Medicare benefits? If you live in the DC area, see your options today at uhcdualplans.com.